Now, here and present is the clock. So I'm going to actually ask my colleagues to ask their questions, and then we're going to ask each of our panelists to cherry pick from those questions and any final thoughts they may have. So let me start with Commissioner Curry, and we'll go from there.
Thank you, Chair Cooper. I agree on your comments that it is a lot of the local municipalities that are carrying out this violence, but I think it is worth noting that much of what we know about the persecution is because the perpetrators themselves are posting it on social media. Why? Because they know that the government is not going to prosecute them and pursue them because they're encouraging them. My question, however, is regarding to faith and theology, and it's my belief that this is not an outcome of Hindu theology, but really is an offense to it. And perhaps you could speak to that, or one of the other panelists.
Thank you. Maybe also to expand, if you can inform us as to which religious leaders in India are speaking out on this issue. Majid, if you have a quick question.
Yeah, my question is misusing of laws. And you know that this not only in India, but around many places in the world, misusing of anti-terrorism laws, of targeting Muslims, leaders, and so forth, especially in the region of Kashmir. I would like to shed light on this issue.
Thank you. Commissioner Ewan.
Just very quickly here in this lightning round, thank you all for being here. I'll submit a few questions for the record in the interest of time. Thanks, Chairman.
Thank you. And Commissioner Schneck.
I'll be quick as well. It seems like most of the violence that's taking place is extra-governmental, and so we're talking about society, and I think this question is particularly directed at Ms. Yeager. A healthy civil society is, in a sense, a fundamental bulwark for human rights, and especially for the rights of freedom of religion or belief. So I'm curious if we could get an update on the status of civil society institutions in India, and whether actions by the Indian government are impacting civil society.
Okay, let's start then with Ms. Yeager, then we'll go to Sunita, Tariq, and Irfan.
Thank you. I will absolutely submit an answer to that question in greater detail. As I said in my testimony, more support needs to be going to civil society, because you're absolutely right that is the bulwark against repression. And so perhaps my fellow panelists can say more about that as well. One thing I wanted to note just in my closing is to say that as a human rights advocate, I very seldom appeal to better angels. The soul cannot be governed by international law or geopolitics, but policy-making actions can. And so while I would love to appeal to Prime Minister Modi and the BJP party to do better, to stop what they are doing, I do find that what it's going to take is for President Biden and other leaders around the world to take significant action at this point. This is one of those inflection points, as much as that has become a cliche in Washington. And that's why we have U.S. policy tools like trade agreements, like defense cooperation, like the nuanced diplomatic carrots and sticks that come with a state visit, the hosting of a G20 with very little criticism around what is happening in India at that time, which simply empowers leaders who are becoming authoritarian and repressive in nature. So with that, thank you so much for having us.
Thank you. Sunita?
Yes, I want to first go back to the question about whether Narendra Modi cares. I think he cares deeply that India continues on this murderous path. That's what he cares about, because he was born and raised and has cut his teeth in the RSS, which is a far-right, I would say fascist organization that its blueprint is to render India a Hindu nation where Muslims and Christians don't belong, have no rights, don't exist. That is where Narendra Modi was formed, and this is the path that was laid down in the founding documents of the RSS. When in 2002, when the Gujarat carnage took 2,000 or more lives of Muslims, when he was asked to comment, he made a comment that showed just how much he cares, that he cares as much as if a puppy was killed in the road. That's how much he cares. The real question is, does India care? And they will tell us next year in the election if they care about the fact that in states like Uttarakhand, we mentioned, there are black crosses. It's so chilling, placed on Muslim houses and businesses, and people, Muslim families, Muslim business owners have to flee for their lives. Around India, hundreds of Hindu citizens come together and take group oaths not to give their business to Muslims. This is what is happening in India's civil society. This is happening under our watch. This is what is happening. You asked about my faith, Hinduism. They are Hindu. My family, my community is Hindu. They're devout Hindu, and they are veering, careening to the right, and they have lost their way. They do not see what is happening. They are reading the misinformation. They are getting lies on their WhatsApp, and they are willfully blind. That is where we are, and I know because I'm Hindu. Some of us, the people who reach out to Hindus for human rights, some people are awake and alert. We are the vanguard. Not in our name is what we say. You asked about Hindu religious leaders that are speaking up. I don't want to say their names because I don't want violence to happen to them. But Swami Agnivesh is no longer here. He was one radical monk that always spoke against this hatred, always. And he died in part. His life was shortened by 2 brutal beatings by Hindu nationalist mobs. And if you look at the attendance at the Parliament of World Religions just last month, you will see that quite a few Hindu religious leaders spoke for unity. And there's one beautiful thing that happened just a few days ago. In December 2021, hundreds and hundreds of saffron-clad Hindu religious leaders, women and men, came together in the holy city of Haridwar and openly, proudly, you can see it on YouTube, called for a genocide of Muslims. That was heartbreaking for a Hindu like me and the people in my organization. But there's hope. There always has to be hope. A few days ago, on the 16th and 17th of September, 25 Hindu religious leaders gathered in that same holy city of Haridwar for a peace gathering. It's 25 in a country of 1.4 billion. It's a drop in the bucket, but we need that drop in the bucket is our salvation. And so the real question, sir, is do we care? And if we care, what are we going to do when 100,000, 200,000, some astronomical number of Muslims or Christians are killed in a catastrophe that is about to happen? What will we say? Will we say that happened on our watch and we're sorry? It'll be too late.
Thank you. Tariq, you spoke, your presentation was about various laws. Can you take a moment about whether the rule of law will prevail in India as you see it?
I think that on one side, we're seeing, like at least since 2017, a worsening of situation in terms of how these laws and how anti-conversion laws are the central part of the political agenda of Hindu nationalist groups and political parties to make them more stiffer, to make them more onerous. And of course, in the central part is to update these laws to target interfaith couples. So you see this worsening trend. But at the same time, in terms of hope, in terms of rule of law, we do see a little bit of a trend where high courts are they're not striking down these laws, but they are seeing that certain aspects of certain sections of them that they feel are a bit more onerous, like prior notice or prior approval aspects of these laws, to strike those down. Certain marriage provisions that have been added to look at scrutinize those a little bit more. So there is a little bit of hope in that end. But as our colleagues have said, this trend is only going to change if there are actually political costs to these political parties that are advocating for these laws. And as we've seen in Karnataka, where the Congress Party has come into power, they have already announced that they're going to scrap their anti-conversion laws. So there's a little bit of hope in that end, in that when there are actual political costs, there could be some change.
So just before we come to Irfan, let me just say on behalf of all the commissioners and our staff how grateful we are for each of you who have been here today and for the issues and the passion in which you delivered your message. We also want to just emphasize the importance of you keeping USCIRF informed, because as we speak, as far as I know, we are still officially uninvited to come to India. We hope that the news coverage that for sure will follow in India will also emphasize that we'd like to hear from all the voices. We'd like to be boots on the ground. And for a country as important and historically that actually taught the rest of the world religious tolerance, sort of brought it to the table many, many centuries ago. For us to have been at this point right now, point of inflection historically, in terms of the abuse or the use of religion for very troubling goals, is extremely worrying. I just want to again emphasize on behalf of USCIRF and our commissioners, we will continue to follow what's going on, but please, when there are 25 religious leaders who do speak up, whatever the numbers are, please inform us. It will help us, and it will also give us a little bit of hope for the future. And finally, Irfan, if you would share a few closing thoughts.
It's difficult to follow those beautiful words of yours, Chairman, but just on the civil society question, let me urge that I think the time is ripe for us to do a pretty serious analysis of the impact of FCRA regulations. The last time I'm aware that Congress paid attention to this was in December 2016, when there was a hearing at the House Foreign Affairs Committee about the use of FCRA. In that case, it was the denial of FCRA to Compassion International. But anecdotal evidence is that, in 2014, there were some 20,000 extant FCRA licenses. That number has dropped to about 6,000 today. Some of those might have been just defunct licenses, but other of those might have been targeted. Anecdotally, again, that if it had Christian in the title of the NGO, it was more likely to get denied. That is, those are anecdotes, and I want to be very clear. I'm a political scientist. I want this to be much more rigorous with the resources you have at your disposal, understanding how these laws are being used and whether they are in fact being used in a way to target religiously oriented organizations that are doing legitimate work in India. Those are American organizations. They deserve the defense and protection of the American government, so long as they're following the laws of the countries in which they're operating. And I think it's one of those sharp points of the spear where the Indian government has used this. And again, the FCRA regulation dates back to 1979. This is not new, right? But we are sitting here today. We can't go back to 1979 and advise them against doing that. What we can say is that in 2023, if it's being used in ways that violate the principles of religious freedom, that is something the U.S. government should be speaking more loudly about. But thank you again to all of you, and thanks to my colleagues for the incredible work they do every day.
Thank you very much. And on behalf of our Vice Chair, Frederick Davey, and my fellow commissioners, it's my honor and responsibility right now to close today's hearing.